Hello everyone and welcome to your horoscope for the week of April 24th till 30th, 2023. We have a very intense week ahead of us, and not just because of the ongoing aspects, but rather because we are in this period between two eclipses. Now, we had this past eclipse on the 19th or 20th of April, depending on where you were on the planet, in the sign of Aries and erratic 29 degrees, a very powerful energy that we're still feeling at the moment. We're still under its impact. The strings of fate are being pulled even as we speak, so we can expect a lot of surprises. But then there is the upcoming lunar eclipse on the 5th of May in the sign of Scorpio. It's not that very rare, but the ruling planet of the eclipse, Pluto, is just gone retrograde not that long at the time of that lunar eclipse, and that makes it quite intense, quite like a purgatory kind of solar eclipse. This was a North Node solar eclipse, which means it does birth something new. It does definitely bring something new to the table, or, you know, at least a movement into new, an impulse, initiation, a decision, a set of course. But then there is the lunar eclipse, which is more about termination, which is more about closure, release, or the result of an alchemical process where something new is already birthed, something new is already alchemized, but we need to accept it. But usually in the sign of Scorpio, it does suggest a powerful release, let's say. But that is on the 5th of May and after. Right now, we are in this period between the two. So even the lunar eclipse can bring those closures, those terminations, those that fate is set up, the moment of clarity ultimately, the acceptance. The moon is always the soul, the light of the soul. The sun is more like the light of the whole consciousness, but the moon is an unconscious energy, a rather gentle, frail, cold light, and that is eclipsed. So it's a soul level acceptance, a soul level clarity, a soul level truth at Scorpio, a scorpionic matter, which can represent a powerful purge, a powerful moment of healing. For example, if it's like a health issue and medical intervention is needed, it gets rid of the problem. It is something that terminates the illness, terminates the issue. So it can have very strong beneficial effects, and especially Scorpio is also about rebirth. But rebirth cannot happen before everything is burned down to ashes. So for some people, this week can be more under the influence of the lunar eclipse, where we break down to break through. So this can represent, for example, a tower moment in the lives of some people, but what follows the tower, the star, fresh hope, new. So, and also, Saturn is in the sign of Pisces. Time, Saturn, Chronos, the chronotic element in that way, is not all that much linear. So maybe it's not like a new beginning, but that which follows a closure. Maybe they're all mixed up. Maybe it's the closure, but we don't know which one comes first or how they succeed each other. So this is where time doesn't follow usually the rational way, where we kind of know which part of the cycle represents what. Autumn, for example, the harvest; summer, the growth and the blooming and the coming to fruition, the maturization; spring, the growth and all that; winter, the sterilization. But what would happen? And actually, I want to say this is just a symbolism, but I do see it in the weather, at least where I live, where what if the seasons would come all mixed up a little bit? And actually, where I live in Romania, we had very, very strange seasons where winter didn't look like winter, or it had moments where it truly behaved like another season. Like randomly. There was even like a thunder, lightning, and that I never. Anyway, this is just because sometimes it's not even all that symbolic. But this happens to anything, really, even to the other natural succession of cycles in our lives, karmically, Saturn, the Lord of Karma, where events might not necessarily make sense in an orderly fashion. It would be time for a closure right now, but surprise, surprise, it doesn't come. It's pending, but the new beginning comes in a stark way, in a Uranian way almost. And Uranus is going to be activated by some planets this week, and I'm going to be speaking about that in a moment. But it's all about the Sun this week because it does conjunct the North Node in the sign of Taurus. And as I said, this is just freshly after the eclipse. So it does bring a lot of truth, a lot of clarity. And the Sun is also an element of combustion, so it does really make that North Node, the energy of the North Node, not necessarily the point of the North Node, having a red light there on our charts, or a red circle that it's that important, it's urgent, but the feeling of it, the fated feeling, we are also internally guided to truly face certain things for our future, for our long-term good, for our values, for everything that is important for us. Progress, evolution, a step forward is really, really important at this moment. It is truly necessary in all of our lives and including collectively. So this brings financial elements to the table, especially collectively, because the sun illuminates something. It sheds light there and it also combusts it, so it makes it urgent. North Node in Taurus, among many other things, can mean banking, World Bank, our collective financial behavior, but for the future, how we need to change our behavior to fix things or stay in balance, return to rudimentary, return to the basics. So that's also return to nature, Taurus. But there's also Uranus there in the sign of Taurus. So return to nature is not that simple because Uranus is the technology, the new, the next. We can't go back in time, to the Stone Age. Going back to the roots is in our way in 2023 in the age of Aquarius, because Pluto is in the sign of Aquarius. So the Aquarian way, we not the like the stark way, as in we just go back, but we find ourselves that we can't really do how our ancestors did as much as we want. We're that much more intelligent than they are, let's say, and yet we still cannot live the way they did. We have to do it our way. So there's no point of reference. So how do we translate this energy to ourselves in our lives, even karmically? What shape do we give this North Node and the karmic aspect of it? How do we weave it? How do we weave the threads of fate? North Node, again, financially or value-wise, or what we need in our lives, even the pleasure, the satisfaction, the long-term satisfaction of our five senses. What do we bring to the table in order to get there, in order to make that stable and permanent part of the security and the safety that we need? All these issues will be very, very important and quite urgent in our lives, and we are definitely going to be feeling this through, you know, um, financially, plans, dates, things to do with banks, debt, loan, anything that has to do with financial planning, financial speculation, investment. So everyone is gonna have, the sun. an illuminating moment where they're gonna be careful, you know, that they need to be careful because there is Saturn, which also sextiles the Sun and the North Node. And Saturn, okay, in Pisces, it's not the typical Saturn, but being careful, especially Saturn in Pisces, listening to your gut feeling, listening to your intuition, listening to your dreams, your guides, what to do, what not to do, because you will be suggested, hinted of what to do and what not to do, perhaps. But Pisces, your life experience, the rest, your own unconscious can give you hints what to do. But anyway, Saturn, the Saturnian principle, being careful, being diligent. Pisces can represent even spiritual wisdom. Taking things into consideration can truly represent an element of true safety, a real safety measure, so to speak, spiritually, psychologically, materially. So that's the good side of the energy. But the rather challenging side of this energy is that Pluto is also squaring the Sun and the North Node conjunction. So Pluto brings the challenges. Exactly, Pluto in the sign of Aquarius, when it poses this challenge, what I said. We need to do all of what I said, return to basics and find our balance, find them. But Pluto challenges us that we have no point of reference. No one did it this way because no one lived. We are a generation, everyone who's alive today are souls who live something for the first time. There's no theory behind this. This is something very, very new. It truly is a turn of fate for everyone because that is how we can name it the best. You know, we can say it in a Jungian way, in an evolutionary way. So many niches in astrology, we can word it differently, but you know, basically, the Taurian way, you know, is that this is a big turn of fate. We choose our fate collect Pluto and Aquarius. Absolutely. But we need awarenesses. And because of this, we're living something that no one ever lived before. So no one knows what to do really. We don't know what to do. No one knows. Our ancestors cannot know what to do. You know what I mean? If there is no all that much guidance in the past because no one did it before, then there's Saturn in the sign of Pisces. There is wisdom in the spirit. The spirit never ever asked to be lived. But there is still wisdom for something not yet lived. We are living it, so we are giving a shape and form to that wisdom. If we are worthy recipients of this, if we truly dedicate this lived moment to us and live it like an adventure, eclipse in Aries, it is an adventure, like it or not, then you know, we are working with it, it will be permissive. It will be as gentle as it can with us. But if we oppose and if we, you know, the sign of Aries can mean I'm opposing fate. I'm going against fate. Not this time, maybe. No, not. You can try. Maybe there, because energetic Aries, sometimes Hercules could overpower the gods. Absolutely. There might be that one single individual who even will be triumphant. But the triumph is always bittersweet because you change something, but the world, everyone else, everything else, the universe itself is going the opposite way. There will be a moment when everyone and everything will be that distant from you, so you will be in darkness with your victory. I don't know why Ixion comes to my mind, even though maybe it's not the planetoid Ixion, just the symbolism of Ixion, who did escape so very easily the wrath of gods, even the wrath turned to sympathy, but he still kept provoking it and provoking it. So, of course, he was cast into the abyss, which means he was distanced from creation. That's what it means, really. There's no light there because you're distant from everything that is created. You're there, you are you, but everything apart from you, what you decide for yourself is meaningless. The abyssal state. Um, yes, but this is basically what we need to understand, that there is no going against fate at this moment. Even if we would be victorious in it, it's an empty victory. Going with the flow, however, well, it acts like a quantum push. Like, it really pushes us forward. It's not maybe gentle, but it's brave. It's full of adrenaline. Did this really happen? It is what it is. So, soldiering on to wherever fate points, that might be the best course of action. And that's the energy that can really work in anything. May it be in our business, where the figures, the facts, the numbers. Why the numbers? Because this is also a week where Mercury is retrograde, and it's also in the sign of Taurus. It's not this week, but next week, when Mercury will meet retrograde with the Sun. So that will be a light bulb moment when we're confronted with everything that truly needs to be taken care of, and also where are the resources lie. And it's not necessarily the resources, the lack of them, that's the problem, but the problem is what we need to sacrifice for them to get them. It's a Plutonian energy ultimately. So there is a not so easy factor here, but there will be resources available, and this is where other aspects are pointing to this. One of this aspect is actually Mercury himself being conjunct, not very tight conjunction, but still being conjunct Uranus, its higher octave. So there is method in the madness. So perhaps this is where the Mercury retrograde truly guides us to where we need to be. And Mercury retrograde, what comes back from the past? Whatever comes back from the past, whatever shows itself, is there to be taken care of. It's an opportunity to confront it and truly work with the flow and close it, do it. That's the opportunity to do it. If it's difficult, if it's hard, if it's uncomfortable, Uranus in Taurus, very uncomfortable, it's still worth it. It's definitely worth it because you're working with the energy. And this can be at a job, at business. Surprise, surprise. This position is on the table. The money would truly be a big bonus to your life, but not the responsibility. You make a decision there and then. You ask your heart, was it worth it? Was it not? Regardless of what you decide. And then chances are in under Venus retrograde in August, if I'm not mistaken, in the sign of Leo, you will feel it through if it was worth it truly for the heart or not. But you need to try it, Gemini, Venus in Gemini. Uh, it needs to dig into the experience to truly see if it's worth it or not. So if your senses tell you, I really would like to try because I'm curious, can I handle that pressure for that money? Sometimes even if something dictates that it's not a good idea, because chances are you can't, because you're not that type of person. But if there is no bad consequence, if you can truly go back to the old position, if it truly, the consequence is just discomfort, if it's just that, well, chances are try it for the sake of trying it. This is where we need to decide. Pluto will challenge our decision making skills in the sign of Aquarius. Why? Because it squares the Sun and North Node. Decisions, but these decisions are what's worth it, what's not. Aquarius, what's for the group, what's for the individual, who sacrifices what. Also, Saturn in Pisces, sacrifice is dual at this moment. Sometimes truly cuts to the bone. Is it worth it? Is it not? But there is other harmonious energy. Before I get to the harmonious energy, there is an energy which, could be harmonious in certain cases, but its intent, it's shocking quite. It's very, very explosive because Jupiter is conjunct Eris. Eris is, you know, uh, the element of rebellion, the element of the, you know, she wasn't invited to the wedding, so she felt like an outcast, and it was the outcast who triumphed over everything. Her triumph was a divine triumph. So you can imagine that the divine, even with Jupiter, luck, blessing, faith, expansion, justice, divine justice, favors the outcast, favors the rebel, favors the brave, favors the extremist sometimes, favors the sovereign who fights for sovereignty, because Eris is all of that. So it expands this archetype. So this means protests, this means revolutionary energy, this means uprising, this means fighting back, this means, you know, intensity out there. And of course, Jupiter is the planet which has a lot to do with truth and justice, and even in the classic sense. So we will see this playing out in courts of justice on the world stage internationally, financially even. Why am I saying financially? Because the North Node Pluto activating as strongly. Justice about financial matters, repartition of resources. Pluto in Aquarius is also fighting for equality. No one has to be left behind. It wants to idolize the law, human rights, community spirit, Saturn in the sign of Pisces. And then Eris is very much also about that. It favors the individual, it favors the basic component. It favors, everyone to matter in that sense. And Jupiter expands this. So there will be a massive fight for human rights or something to do with justice in that sense, justice for the individual, sovereignty, what sovereignty means. And also things about war. Why? Well, Mars is in the sign of Cancer, and Mars in Cancer is protects the family, protects children, protects country, protects borders, protects nations. It is a highly defensive energy. So we will play this out on the world stage. Preparations of war, even if it's a bit exaggerated. This Black Moon Lilith in the sign of Leo, it makes things way too hyper. It makes the energies highly aggressive. It's like a really, really angry lion. Of course, it roars but not even a very angry lion would attack a just as angry elephant or rhino or hippo. Maybe a baby one, yes, but not a massive. So roaring is roaring. Some astrologers and even mystics say that this can really, conjure up, concoct some violent energies, violence, like war, like threats of war, like, or like something that has to do with, Eris expanded by Jupiter, anarchy in that sense, symbols of not of course not to be taken literally, and then Uranus in the sign of Taurus and Pluto squaring the nodes. There's always, when this energy is active, financial problems, but because there's a collective depression. There's like almost like a social depression. It's the feeling Venus. Yes, money. It reflects in the flow of money. Mercury in the sign of Taurus, where money flows. And my least favorite tarot card is the Five of Pentacles, and that is Mercury in the sign of Taurus. Scarcity, But, you know, how should I say, the power within scarcity, because some people with exactly with their scarcity are very powerful in a bad way, in a good way, in whatever way. But the five of Pentacles energy and Mercury in the sign of Taurus, the scarcity not to be mistaken. You know, it's not really what it seems. There's much more to it. And Pluto dissects this matter. This is where sometimes scarcity is a matter of preference, choice, belief, faith. And then, is mercy truly susceptible there? Or is mercy actually something that keeps a false or makes something that should be extremely difficult way too easy? So then we're toying with fate and karma. Scarcity should feel like scarcity in any way, shape, and form. Let's not take away the spirit of scarcity, if you know what I mean. So there's more to Mercury in the sign of Taurus than meets the eye. We need to allow the flow to reflect the truth. The truth where value lies. Mercury in the sign of Taurus can also be like a detector of where, like underwater stream, which means life, which means prosperity, because everything grows, sign of Taurus. And some people have either special senses or have some kind of skills to detect that underwater flow, river, stream, whatever, the key of prosperity. Other people still can even detect gold where it lies. Other people treasure, other people, oil. So this is also the energy. And Mercury, sorry, not Mercury, no, 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 no. The Sun conjunct the North Node, especially at the beginning of the week, sextile Saturn. Saturn, the sign of Pisces, exactly the deep. Where value lies in the deep. We can sniff it out sometimes. So there's a good aspect for that. And this Mars in the sign of Cancer, very, very protective, sextiles Mercury. So it will find the means. And sometimes this means measures of conservation, cutting costs, thinking about the future, cutting down expenses, sacrificing more for the family, thinking about not just yourself but everyone else. This is a really, really positive energy, but this also means that everyone is going to be much more protective of their borders, of their culture, of their country, of all of you know, these elements, so to speak. So this does promote that tensions can be quite high in we will be seeing this play out in the world stage out there. But let's say there's also a highly positive energy because Mars sextiles Uranus as well. Mars sextile Uranus does represent, for example, nature has a solution to everything. There, the natural flow can guide you there. Ingenuity, Uranus brings the ingenuity to the table. Improvise. A positive example. If others managed, so can I. And this is where it's not comparing in a negative way, but being aware that I'm a human being. If another human being whose parameters I also operate in, bioparameters, spirit parameters, whatever parameters you wish. If I operate in that, well, chances are I can do it up Uranian awareness, and I go and try, and of course I succeed in that sense. Moments of courage, but even in ingenuity, if you have a eureka moment, if you have an epiphany, even a soul epiphany, because Mars in Cancer, empathic energy, and accept help. Sometimes the hardest thing is to receive help, and this can sometimes mean to receive help where it's given. And speaking about help, towards the very end of the week, we have certain energies which are growing. They're not exact, but we can feel them like a saving grace. For example, Venus sextiling Jupiter. The two benefics, meeting and dancing with each other harmoniously in the sky, they do promote, sharing of, you know, thoughts, sharing of, for example, modus operandi, sharing of advice, sharing of connections, sharing of getting together informationally. So everyone wants the other one's highest good and they take care of each other. The word goes, but it's benevolent. Under, for example, under very bad Mercury aspects, especially when it's retrograde, the gossip, the goes bad. But when there is highly benevolent aspect, and when I say Mercury, because Venus is in the sign of Gemini, so under Mercury's influence, when there is true benevolence in the sky, and also in our minds, in our hearts, then the word can do a lot of good. It's like a word of warning. Be careful because this, and this. If you need help, this is where it's available. In case something happens, this is what we must do. One person helping the other person, so spreading the good word in that sense. Or if someone is vulnerable, help finds them through word. There are a lot of good aspects to this. And of course, this is how I see one of the expressions of this energy, even though it's Venus, but Jupiter is the blessing, it is the benevolence Aries. Aries is an energy, because at this time, Jupiter is also conjunct Aries. So, Venus is sextiling her as well. This is where the best expression, when someone truly beats all odds. There is a funny YouTube video or TikTok or whatever when a tiny little lizard outruns an army like a swarm of snakes chasing it. It beat all odds. That is how I see this energy. If the divine, and of course your own faith in the divine, so it's a two-way thing, not just the divine itself, because the divine can will what it desires, but if it's not received by matter, by you, etc., etc., well, it will just remain as a good wish. How is this possible? Isn't the divine almighty in that sense? Of course, but it doesn't intervene in that way unless, unless that's like the stuff which is about legends in the Bible, miracles, but big thing miracles, or even personal miracles. But that situation was when the divine had to intervene. Otherwise, it can be full of good intent and cheer for you and want to help if it's not received by something. Like, let me give you an example when it's really not our fault directly. Let's say there's divine timing at play, the good is coming, the energy is there, we feel serendipitous, but we live in the wrong city. We live in the wrong domain, let's say. Why? Because sometimes, not always, not for everyone, but for some people, it's exactly that which counts. For example, for people who have a lot of fourth house placements and energy, many times exactly the place itself, in certain ridiculous cases, the rocks, the minerals, the this and that under the place itself is what will, that is an ideal, that is an essential component to complete the fated event manifestation, make it more perfect, make it more, make it ideal, make it manifest in the earthly plane, because the energy can be there, but if something is really really off, then it will not, rather stay pending than manifest in, when you plant something in a soil which is really not a good mate with that plant, and even if the plant like attempts to grow, tries to grow, but you see it struggling, you know that it will not be okay ever. unless you change. You know what I mean? So this is why sometimes there are certain requirements which we are not aware of, and that is what fate is waiting on, the divine is waiting on. And this is when it's only our fault, when we start realizing that, why am I really here? Because I don't like the architecture, I don't like even the trees, the plants, the it don't something doesn't feel right. Now if the plants, the trees, the nature of the place feels a bit weird, alien to you, then that's a big message that energetically, I don't know what your life story is, what your needs, the circumstances, but energetically it's not where you're supposed to be. You being there, it's like your decision, but it cuts a certain type of flow in certain types of areas of life. Not all, but certain ones which do depend of the energy of places and the flow of energy of certain places. Because you can imagine, for some people it doesn't count. For others it counts ethnicity, genes, who you share with, who you serve. There's such thing as nation karma, and as ridiculous as this is, and even I was highly skeptical of this until I saw it. I still don't want to believe it, but I need to mention that for some people this is real. This is real. For some people this is real. I don't want it to be real for me, but I cannot deny what I saw in chart, what I saw actually the stories, and no, and but it this is where you need to find your place, your distinctive situation, psychoanalyze yourself, because just because everyone else does things in a certain way, that doesn't mean it's 100% guaranteed that it works for you different, that it works for you the same way. Maybe it works for you differently in anything, and this is true in anything. Find your own distinctiveness. This is what Uranus tells us as well. Find what is you, your own way. Dream it up if it doesn't exist, or be your own psychoanalyst. And last but not least, also at the end of the week, Venus is gonna start squaring Neptune at higher octave. Remember that we had Mars in this position not that long ago in February and March. But I do believe it was in March when the square was at its finest. How does the heart feel about that situation? So that situation may be highlighted again. How do you feel about it? Maybe some feelings clarify, or other feelings get even more lost into confusion. So some don't make hasty choices, decisions, and be careful what you say and do. And also, Venus is in the sign of Gemini, Neptune is in the sign of Pisces, um, and Mercury is retrograde because Mercury is the ruler of Gemini. Deception, con, fraud, lies, fakeness, falseness. Be very, very careful who you and what you trust, because this energy really just favors the illusionary, but at the same time, it's very quickly uncovered. Very, very quickly, in a flash of an eye, because there is Uranus and there is that Pluto squaring the North Node. Even if we are caught up in an illusion, well, chances are it won't will be very quickly will become aware of it, will be slapped quickly to reality. But anyway, we need to take into consideration that, as I said, the two eclipses working together, pushing into each other, and especially that this eclipse was not in the sign of Taurus, you know, because usually it's in the same axis. This was cusp, my opinion. So this is strange. This is where we might not immediately feel the karmic correlation, or it might not be linear. Time is not linear. A lot of things don't make sense. A lot of consequences are not what they should be normally. Things don't really make all that much sense right now, but that's part of, let's say, perhaps divine justice, divine plan, divine madness, if not anything else. And it has a meaning, but we need to give it time. So, thank you everyone for listening. I do hope that this is helpful. I know it's an intensely strange period, and we're all caught up in so very many types of different intensity, but all we can do is really stay strong and stay grounded in our faith. So, sending everyone a lot of good wishes. Until next time, bye for now.